It is easy to list the things that make someone a good person. We give to the poor, we serve others, we sacrifice our time, our energy, and our money to build something better for the people around us. For most of us, the math is simple. If you perform those outward actions, you are inherently sound. You are on the right track. But there is a massive blind spot in that logic. As human beings, we are incredibly good at evaluating the outside of a person. We are terrible at examining what is actually driving them on the inside. When we focus solely on the visible action, we miss the underlying tension, an invisible battle that quietly shapes the direction of a person's heart. 2,000 years ago, Jesus pointed out the danger of relying purely on those external actions. He delivered a very specific warning. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Looking at this ancient manuscript of Matthew, this instruction has been preserved as a core pillar of the faith. Notice what is missing. He never says that doing good is wrong. Helping a neighbor, giving to charity, praying in public, none are the problem. The conflict lies entirely in the motivation. The hidden war inside every human heart is the tension between wanting to be seen by God and wanting to be applauded by the people around us. Watch these two figures handing a coin to someone in need. Outwardly, they are identical, but check the inside. The left person is driven by a single connection of genuine love. The right person fractures that energy to pull in public admiration. It is completely possible to deceive ourselves here. We can say a prayer and tell ourselves we are serving God, while secretly waiting for someone to tap us on the shoulder and say we are amazing. When that desire for recognition goes unexamined, genuine faith slowly rots away. It stops being a relationship and becomes a stage play. Without constantly checking our motives, spiritual life ceases to be a living, breathing connection. It degrades into an exhausting public act, performed for an audience that will eventually look away. This painting of a young Jesus sitting calmly amidst a noisy temple captures the moment he interrupts our performance. He asks, "Who is your audience?" We can test our answer by stripping away the layers of validation. First, if nobody ever thanked you for the work you do, would you still serve? Let's take it a step further. If not a single soul ever knew about the time or money you gave up, would you still sacrifice? What if there was zero chance of ever receiving public praise? Would you still pray? If those questions make you uncomfortable, they are supposed to. Stripping away the applause acts as a stress test, peeling back the layers of social camouflage to reveal the unvarnished state of the heart. There is a profound freedom waiting for anyone who can pass that test. When your motives are pure, you no longer need a crowd to prove your worth. You know that no matter how isolated you feel, there is always someone watching. And that observer is not a distant, harsh judge pacing back and forth waiting for you to fail. That observer is a Father in heaven. True spiritual worth only becomes self-sustaining when it is anchored in that Father's gaze, rather than the fleeting applause of society. Jesus uses these hard questions to pull us off the exhausting stage of public performance. He guides us toward the secret place, a hidden arena where the crowds disappear, the applause fades, and only you and God are present. Real faith does not begin when the whole world is watching you. It begins in the dark, when you realize God is the only audience you will ever need.
We see it in our feeds every day. Someone hands cash to a person on the street, ensuring the framing captures the moment. Before the act of kindness is even finished, it has already been packaged for an audience. Many of us accept this as a standard trade-off. If someone in need receives help, the public applause feels like a harmless bonus for the person giving it. But this tension reveals a hidden battle happening inside the heart. This internal conflict determines whether our faith is a genuine connection to God or a performance for the people around us. If nobody saw the good thing you did today, would you still do it? If there were no thank you notes, no social media likes, and no recognition of your sacrifice, would you still serve? When our primary focus shifts toward being noticed, our faith slowly turns into a stage. The people in our lives become the audience, and we begin to prioritize the appearance of goodness over the act itself. These two figures represent individuals performing the same action, handing a donation to someone in need. From the outside, their deeds are identical, yet their internal motives are worlds apart. One acts out of love. The other acts specifically to secure human admiration. While human eyes are limited to observing the outward performance, God sees the heart. He measures the metrics we cannot see. This makes judging our spiritual health by our actions alone a dangerous trap. We can perform every religious duty correctly, while the heart behind those actions remains completely disconnected. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus warns his followers not to practice their righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. He isn't condemning public service. He is identifying a specific heart posture. He uses the image of announcing charity with trumpets. It's a vivid description of someone who turns mercy into publicity and sacrifice into a personal brand. This is the mechanism of hypocrisy. It transforms acts of devotion into reputation management. This behavior is subtle because it often looks compassionate. A hypocrite can pray beautiful prayers. They can give generously and serve with high energy. But the needy person in this scenario is being used as a prop. The primary goal isn't to help another human being, but to use that help as currency to buy a reputation for being spiritual. Jesus notes that those who perform for applause have received their reward in full. The transaction is simple. You input a good deed, and you receive human validation as the immediate payout. Human praise is a zero-sum currency. Once the crowd claps, the deal is done. The ledger is cleared, and there is no lasting value remaining. This creates an exhausting cycle for the performer. Because the high of recognition fades so quickly, you have to execute more deeds and capture more moments to secure the next round of applause. Seeking this validation locks us in a psychological prison. Our worth becomes entirely dependent on maintaining an image that keeps the audience interested. There is a different path. It involves stepping away from the stage and the noise and moving into a space where no one is watching. Stepping away from the stage liberates us from the anxiety of image management. It removes the pressure to always look holy or appear generous. This is the secret place, a realm where God is the only audience. When we operate in the hidden place, we prove to ourselves that we no longer need the validation of a crowd to confirm our worth. Digital recognition and human popularity are temporary, but actions taken solely before God have a permanence that the spotlight can never provide. God watches the secret place as a father who values authenticity over a polished performance. There is a deep freedom in loving, giving, and serving honestly without the need for anyone else to know what you've done. Applause fades. Recognition disappears. But the faith cultivated in the hidden, secret places remains forever. There is a silent conflict happening inside every human hearth. It has no physical battlefield, yet it quietly determines the entire direction of a person's spiritual life. Imagine two people deciding to give money to someone living on the street. Outwardly, they look identical. They reach into their pockets, hand over the cash, and walk away. Though physical movements appear identical, their spiritual value completely diverges. God examines the motivation, seeing one pathway pointing upward and another reaching for a crowd. Seeking admiration acts as a filter, corrupting the action, while genuine love maintains a pure upward vector. This distinction is highly relevant today. We carry cameras in our pockets,
and live on platforms designed to broadcast our every move, making it incredibly easy to turn our faith into a stage. This leads to a disruptive question. If you had absolute certainty that no one would ever see your sacrifice, that no one would ever thank you or even know it happened, would you still do it? Prioritizing human attention over God's observation drains the spiritual weight from our actions. We stop being faithful and begin acting for an audience. That performance often begins with a subtle shift. A person sees someone in need, reaches for a coin, but hesitates just long enough to glance over their shoulder to ensure someone is watching. That split-second calculation transforms an act of mercy into a publicity stunt. It turns a moment of generosity into a move for personal branding. In the book of Matthew, Jesus warns against announcing our good deeds. He reveals that hypocrisy frequently disguises itself as holiness or generosity, rather than appearing outwardly evil. Jesus says, "They have received their reward in full." Coupling an action with human praise creates a closed loop with zero residual return. When human praise is the goal, the reward crumbles as the spotlight fades, leaving the spiritual ledger empty. Trading genuine spiritual intimacy for a moment of public recognition is a catastrophic investment. This transactional mindset even infects prayer. What should be a private conversation with God can easily be weaponized to harvest human approval. A person can use beautiful spiritual language while their heart actually scans the room for validation. Their lips point toward heaven, but their focus remains fixed on the crowd. This creates a volatile emotional trap. When praise dictates your value, silence or criticism renders you worthless. Your sense of importance becomes entirely dependent on the reactions of others. Constantly having to build, manage, and protect a religious reputation is psychologically staggering. It leaves a person feeling hollow and deeply exhausted. Relying on human validation turns faith into a prison, forcing an individual to endlessly perform a character they can never turn off. Jesus offers a direct antidote to this exhaustion. He invites us to step off the stage and enter what he calls the secret place. Matthew 6:4 contains a foundational promise. Your Father explicitly sees and rewards what is done entirely in secret. This applies to the unglamorous acts the world ignores: late-night prayers, caring for a difficult family member, and unseen acts of private forgiveness. God records every one of them. Modern culture demands visibility and brand building. Jesus demands the opposite: faithfulness and the guarding of the heart. The secret place offers profound emotional relief. It is the one environment where a person can stop pretending, admit failure, and drop the demand to appear strong. The ultimate prize of faith is the quiet, unbreakable certainty that the Creator of the universe knows your name. The most powerful acts of faith will never be caught on camera. True belonging with the Father begins the moment the audience disappears. Imagine two people in a crowded city. They both see someone who is hungry and desperately needs help. In the exact same moment, they both reach into their pockets and decide to give. From the outside, the action looks identical. It looks compassionate and beautiful. But zoom in closer, and these two moments couldn't be more different. One act is full of genuine love. The other is completely hollow. This reveals a battle happening quietly in the human heart. Every act of service or sacrifice is governed by a deeper internal driver, the specific reason why you are doing it. This split screen illustrates the disconnect. On top, we see exactly what human eyes can judge, the physical action of dropping a coin. But on the bottom, we see what God evaluates, the unseen internal motive hidden in the heart. Holding ourselves to this standard is uncomfortable. It is easy to judge the actions of others,
but we rarely examine our own motives. We might say, "Lord, I am serving you," while deep down we are quietly waiting for someone to notice. When our actions depend on human validation, the dynamic shifts. Our faith stops being an act of service to the people we are helping and instead turns into a disguised search for our own self-worth. If we aren't careful, the search for recognition turns our spiritual life into a literal stage. We stand under the spotlight. The people around us become an audience. Jesus warned about this specific trap in Matthew chapter 6. He described people who announce their gifts to the needy with trumpets, turning a quiet act of mercy into an advertisement for their own character. A single charitable act starts in the center, but is immediately swallowed by an expanding web of digital screens and notifications. As the impulse to document takes over, mercy morphs into pomposity, turning quiet generosity into an exercise in personal branding. This is what makes hypocrisy so difficult to spot. It doesn't always look evil. A hypocrite can pray, they can serve, and speak beautifully about God. Hypocrisy often wears the mask of holiness, generosity, and compassion. But when good deeds are weaponized for an audience, the transaction is empty. The act ceases to be about alleviating the suffering of the person in need. It becomes entirely about elevating the status of the person giving. Jesus offers a sobering response to this kind of performance. He says, "They have received their reward in full." It is a strict transaction. If a person's ultimate goal was human praise, that moment in the spotlight is the only payment they will ever receive. They wanted applause, they received it, and the account is closed. Nothing more is coming. This line graph maps out the psychological trap of living for that reaction. When the crowd notices you, your emotional state spikes. You feel valued and important. But the moment their attention drifts, your self-worth instantly flatlines into feeling forgotten and invisible. This emotional volatility even infects the most intimate spiritual act of all, prayer. A person might use impressive language while standing in public. Their lips are pointing toward heaven, but they aren't actually talking to God. They are delivering a hollow speech, carefully crafted to impress the people listening in the room. A faith that relies on an audience is inherently fragile, because human attention is temporary, and when the applause inevitably fades, there is absolutely no foundation left to hold that person up. The only way out of the performance trap is to walk off the stage entirely. You have to retreat to the secret place, a space where there are 0 cameras, 0 spectators, and 0 applause. Human memory is short, and public recognition fades quickly. But your Father in heaven sees what is done in secret, and what is done before him remains permanently. There is a massive psychological relief waiting in that quiet space. When you stop needing people to validate you, you no longer have to spend your energy building a perfect image or protecting a fragile reputation. You can simply exist, honestly. This is where real faith actually happens. It doesn't happen under stage lights. It happens at a kitchen table late at night, in a quiet hospital room, or in a silent, entirely unseen act of forgiving someone who hurt you. Think of this single burning candle in a dark room. It represents the quiet intimacy of secret prayer. You don't need a polished religious show. You can simply be vulnerable. You can confess, "I am tired," "I am afraid," or "I need help." In that silent space, God sees. He understands the sacrifices nobody else recognized. He remembers the times you did the right thing when nobody even knew it was you. He knows the private battles nobody else understands. Having the Father see you in the secret place is the only reward that matters. There is a deep, singular satisfaction in knowing that your name is known by God. We live in an era where almost everything we do can be documented, photographed, and broadcast to the world. Beneath all of this sharing is a very human drive. We want to be recognized. We want to be remembered, appreciated, and praised by those around us. Think about someone giving money to a person in need, or sacrificing their time to help a stranger. On the surface, the action looks deeply compassionate. It looks completely righteous. But in a culture where every action can be observed, there is a risk. Our best virtues can slowly transform into carefully curated performances, designed for an audience rather than coming from a place of genuine goodness. This creates an invisible conflict that happens entirely within the human heart. It's a quiet tension that determines the actual direction of our spiritual lives. Imagine two people performing the exact same action. Outwardly, they look identical. But if you trace the source of that action, you find completely different motivations. One person acts because they genuinely love others. The other does it because they want to build their reputation and gather admiration. One path resolves in a quiet sense of completeness, while the other is constantly broadcasting a signal, waiting for external validation. Which brings up a very uncomfortable question. If nobody saw the good thing you did, if nobody thanked you, and the applause stopped completely, would you still do it? When we rely on that external validation, our faith subtly becomes a stage. The action itself loses its integrity and becomes a mere transaction, trading what looks like sacrifice for human approval. This dynamic is exactly what Jesus addresses in the book of Matthew in chapter 6. He warns against practicing righteousness specifically to be seen by others. He points out how subtle hypocrisy really is. It doesn't usually look evil. Hypocrisy often looks compassionate, generous, or even holy, while secretly chasing human approval. Jesus says those who turn mercy into publicity have received their reward in full. It's an economic transaction. Put a good deed on the ledger, get praise in return. But once it clears, the account is closed. Applause fades, leaving nothing of eternal value. Having a performative faith doesn't necessarily make someone a bad person, but it bankrupts their spiritual life, trading something eternal for a few seconds of temporary attention. The antidote to this constant need for an audience is what Jesus calls the secret place. It's a state of operating where your actions are observed by absolutely no one, except a Father who sees in secret. This is where the most profound acts of a human life happen. Your unrecorded tears, your whispered prayers, unseen acts of forgiveness, and quiet sacrifices made for others in the middle of the night. Stepping into this space provides immense psychological relief. You no longer carry the heavy burden of projecting strength, building an image, or impressing an audience. Instead of relying on scripted spiritual language to sound impressive, you can simply be honest. You can admit your fears and confess your failures, knowing you are already fully understood. It is the only environment where true authenticity can survive, because it is completely insulated from the corrupting pressure of the crowd. When you rely on the crowd, your emotional stability is tied to their volatile reactions. If they praise you, you feel valuable. If they criticize, your self-worth crashes. Keeping this metric high requires a never-ending, frantic cycle of protecting your public image. The alternative is anchoring your identity to a God who does not change. Crowds will praise you one day and forget your name the next. But the Father's knowledge and love remain perfectly steady. Outsourcing your identity to the crowd makes you a prisoner of their changing opinions. Anchoring your worth in God creates true independence. This independence brings a profound kind of spiritual freedom, the ability to do good, to love deeply, and to sacrifice generously without feeling any compulsion to prove it to the world. Public recognition always fades. Applause dies out. But whatever is done purely before the eyes of God remains. Which leaves us with one critical question. What would you do differently today if you operated under the assumption that God was the absolute only audience of your life? It's an invitation to step off the stage, to let go of the exhausting need for applause, and embrace the quiet reality of being fully known in secret. Because true liberation is found when you stop performing for a temporary world and begin living faithfully for an audience of one.
There is a battle happening inside every human heart, and no one else can see it. It dictates the direction of our spiritual lives. It is the quiet choice between wanting to be seen by God or wanting to be seen by people. Imagine a man walking down a busy street. He spots someone who is hungry and needs help. He reaches into his coat, ready to give. But right before he hands the money over, he pauses. He checks the street. He looks around to see if anyone is paying attention. Once he knows the crowd is watching, he completes the handoff. The people notice. The murmurs begin. They praise his compassion. He smiles, receiving exactly what he wanted. Two people can give money to someone in need, and outwardly the actions look identical. But if one gives out of love, and the other gives to buy admiration, the spiritual value of those two deeds is completely different. This desire for public validation thrives today. We live in an environment where almost every action can be photographed, posted online, and documented for public consumption. This chart illustrates how easily an isolated act of generosity is broadcasted into dozens of digital signals. Quiet sacrifices are packaged and repurposed into tools for personal branding, which leads us to an uncomfortable question. If nobody saw the good thing you did, if nobody ever thanked you or liked your post, would you still do it? When we constantly require an audience, our faith slowly turns into a stage. We stop living completely honestly before God and instead trap ourselves in an exhausting performance for the people around us. Jesus addresses this directly in the book of Matthew, stepping onto this metaphorical stage to expose a highly subtle form of hypocrisy. The problem is that this behavior rarely looks evil. A hypocrite can pray beautifully, serve tirelessly, and give generously. The outside looks entirely fully, while the heart is busy asking, "What do people think of me?" Jesus describes people who turn mercy into publicity, warning his listeners not to announce their charity with trumpets just to be praised by others. Jesus states those seeking attention have received their reward in full. The gift is pushed across the line, and a speech bubble of praise comes back. That bubble is the entire payment. The spiritual transaction is closed, and they receive absolutely nothing more. Trading spiritual integrity for human validation is a terrible exchange. The applause dies down quickly, and the popularity simply disappears. To break us out of this cycle, Jesus invites us away from the noise of the stage. He points us toward a quiet, unrecorded location, the secret place. Think about prayer. It should be the most intimate conversation between a person and God. Yet, even prayer is frequently weaponized by people who love to stand and speak publicly simply to make sure the crowd notices their spiritual vocabulary. Compare a long, impressive public speech to a desperate prayer whispered alone in a dark room. In that hidden space, there are no cameras. You can drop the pretense. You can admit you are tired, confess where you failed, and ask for help without needing to appear strong. The secret place strips away the need to curate an image. It reveals that real faith is an honest relationship, not a well-rehearsed speech. Living for an audience of one entirely shifts the foundation of your identity. You begin to base your worth on what God sees, rather than what people think. When your emotional life depends on crowds, you become incredibly fragile. If they praise you, you feel valuable. If they criticize you or forget your name, you feel worthless and invisible. This chart tracks that contrast. The fluctuating line is human approval, erratic and temporary. Below it, the solid baseline represents divine validation. God does not change, and His knowledge of you remains perfect and steady. True spiritual freedom occurs when you finally stop needing other people to validate your goodness in order to feel secure. It is heavy to feel invisible. There are moments when you do the right thing, when you sacrifice deeply, and absolutely no one notices. Maybe you are up late praying for your family. Maybe you are caring for someone who is struggling, working a job without any thanks, or quietly choosing to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. In Matthew 6, Jesus offers a definitive promise for these silent acts. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. If the applause stops entirely, keep going. Keep serving, keep giving, and keep loving. Do it because you know exactly who you belong to. You don't need the whole world to know your name. When the crowd forgets you, heaven is not silent. Everything you do in the secret place is seen, understood, and eternally remembered by the Father.